This is a special presentation of Major League Baseball magazine, brought to you by Fritos. ESPN presents Major League Baseball magazine, featuring a storied journey back in the days when baseball went to war.
Pearl Harbor was bombed.
There goes my baseball career.
There were 274 Major League players in military service in World War II.
Something about the Navy, they if you're a ball player, they let you play ball.
My unit captured the Remagen Bridge over the Rhine River.
The fans here in this country want to see our national game continue.
You take your good talent out, a lot of your good talent is naturally going to weaken it a little.
Ted Williams, what kind of records? Bob Feller, what kind of records would they have had they not been interrupted?
When I came back, I felt like, wow, what a great way to make a living.
This is Warner Fussell for Major League Baseball magazine.
Presented by New Wild and Mild ranch-flavored Frito brand corn chips. Rustle up some.
December 7th, 1941. The kind of day you don't forget no matter where you were.
I was at Balboa Stadium in San Diego watching San Diego Bombers play. The PA announcer asked all military personnel to report back to their bases.
And I was listening to the Washington Redskin Green Bay Packer game, I believe it was.
It was a championship game, and they broke that game to announce that, and I guaranteed it sent chills right through me.
The announcement came on then that Pearl Harbor was bombed, and we're all wondering where the heck Pearl Harbor was at the time and all that.
I can remember that day. I'll never forget it.
I heard on radio that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. I said, oh, hell, you know, here goes my baseball career.
Getting into the service wasn't paramount in my mind. Still, I wanted to play baseball for sure. Now, I was a little different Bob Feller. He joined up 3 days later, and off he was.
Everybody knew we were in the war. It was a different kind of war. It wasn't Vietnam. It was a question of Germany, to conquer the world. And there was no choice. Everybody joined up.
Over the next 3 years, lots of players joined the service. And though the uniforms were different, the game quite often stayed the same.
I was in the Navy, so I was sent to Hawaii, so we played a lot of ball over there. Something about the Navy, they if you're a ball player, they let you play ball.
The Army and Navy had baseball teams. They had an Army-Navy World Series in Hawaii in 1945. And some of the greatest names in baseball were on those teams because they were Major League Baseball players, and they were called from all over the Pacific and Europe to develop these teams and staff the teams.
We had full houses, and then when we'd play an all-star game, American National League teams, we'd have so many people that couldn't sit down, and they'd be down each foul line, right and left field.
Baseball in the service was good for morale and provided fodder for a different kind of war story.
I played in Corpus Christi about 8 games. I saw one of the greatest games I ever saw, with Bob Kennedy playing shortstop and Ted Williams playing. And Ted Williams in that game is for the championship of the Navy. That game went something like 17 innings, and Ted Williams went 0 for 7 in the game. I imagine that was the only time in his life he ever went 0 for 7.
I never will forget, I was working behind a plate. Clyde McCullough was the catcher, and somebody hit a big, long, tall pop fly behind there. It was a foul. And I says, I'll bet that hit the hood of my car. Would you believe all those cars that was around there? I go out there, and I've got a dent in my hood that big. It was my car it hit.
And we played in the ballpark at Rizal Stadium that the Japanese had used for an ammunition dump. And the first time we saw it, the whole right field fence was shot up. There were bullet holes all over. The dugout was shot up. And I thought, man, this was 27 Yankees must have taken batting practice here. It was all beat up.
I knew a chief in the Seabees, and the Seabees built us a baseball diamond right on the white coral reef. And we took bomb crates and made bleachers, and we'd have 6, 8, 10,000 people every game. And even down on that we had the Japanese soldiers, which was holed up in some of those hills, they came out and saw us play ball. Didn't shoot us.
My ball team that I had on Guadalcanal, we used to have to take an Atabrine for malaria. And we didn't have no uniforms or anything, so I took all the white T-shirts and put them in a bucket of water and threw about 10 balls of Atabrine in there, and all the shirts came out yellow. And that was our uniform that we had on Guadalcanal when we played.
Our manager was Kirby Higbee of the Brooklyn Dodgers, and that's why we were called the Manila Dodgers. And Higbee had two signs on it. He was the best manager I ever played for. He had two signals. You were always hitting, no take sign, and nobody could hit a triple with him on first because he wasn't going to run.
And here I was a Class D ball player playing for this Navy team, and I pitched against Red Roughing this day, and won't go into the long details, but this particular day, Joe DiMaggio hit a home run off me, and from the pitcher's mound, picture me now, 150 pounds, looked like a nose on the end of a lollipop stick. I wasn't too pretty in those days. Picture now me coming off the mound as Joe DiMaggio with that beautiful gait that he has, Mr. Coffee, rounding first base, and here I picked him up as he rounded, and here's 10 to 15,000 servicemen screaming as I followed him around the bases as he came into home plate. Now, this is an ad-lib, had to be. Here's the whole team come out of the dugout, out of their bullpen, came to home plate, shook Max Patkin's hand, who threw the home run pitch, and Joe DiMaggio went back to the dugout, empty dugout, and they walked me back to the mound, patting me on the back all the way. And I think that baseball's bobbing around in the South Pacific. Metrobilia, they call it. Worth a lot of money if they find it.
For many servicemen, the battles on the ball field overseas were the toughest ones they'd face.
I wasn't in any life-threatening situations or anything like that, except maybe a bad infield or two.
It was all right. Well, I would much rather have been in some duty in the States, but it was a hell of a lot better duty than some of the other people had, too.
Not everyone from baseball was playing baseball in the war. Some guys saw battle action, and those stories aren't so fond.
We were involved in the breakthrough of the Germans in Belgium, and then actually my unit was surrounded by the Germans, so we were in a pocket in the Black Forest. The Germans, when they made their breakthrough, had our equipment, our uniforms, even our dog tags. So that to show you how baseball is a part of Americana, the communication that we had among Americans was something like who played second base for the bums. You know, the Germans knew about Brooklyn, they knew about New York and our lifestyle, but they didn't know our colloquialisms, and especially baseball. And I pity any guy that was an American soldier that wasn't a baseball fan, because now he's in deep trouble.
I was in the lead jeep of a patrol, and a sniper from a building shot from above, and the bullet went in the back of the steel helmet and came out the front of it, and it just scraped the helmet liner. And at the time, I just felt a tick, and I just slumped over like I was dead, and the driver went as fast as he could and went behind the building. And then when I looked up, they said, "My God, he's still alive," because they thought the bullet had gone on through.
MacArthur used us in his Philippine operation. It was the first time that the Marines got into close air support. We would bomb ahead of the troops 100, 300 yards, which is fairly close when you get into that sort of stuff. And 7 squadrons in MAG 24 and 32 went to the Philippines with MacArthur, and we worked the whole strip, you know, from the Leyte, Mindanao, the Lingayen Gulf, and Luzon.
And then we went into Germany, and my unit captured the Remagen Bridge over the Rhine River, which probably shortened the war by several months. My assignment was to post guards on this bridge, and another officer and I were discussing where those people were supposed to be on the bridge. And this was like 1 minute of 4. My group was supposed to take over at 4 o'clock. And that bridge fell of its own accord because we had added too much weight to it. We were trying to get our equipment across that bridge to establish a bridgehead on the other side. And this was an old railroad bridge, and we added so much weight to it that the rivets popped out of that bridge, and it sounded like machine gun fire, really. And 1 minute later, I would have been on that bridge. So I felt like I was a pretty lucky guy, and I guess that luck followed through my baseball.
One who also found himself in the middle of the fray was NBC's innovative baseball director, Harry Coyle.
One of the missions that has always been a point to remember in my mind, we took off and they sent us to Munich, which was quite far to bomb. And we didn't have a specific target in respect to like a oil refinery or this. We were almost going down one street and up the next street. We found out later we were after Hitler. Hitler was in town there, and we were going to try to get him. And we did a little bit of damage to Munich on that day.
And a baseball announcing legend almost lost his life when asked to join Glenn Miller overseas.
Glenn had mentioned to me that they were going into, the whole band, they were going into service, and he'd like me, if I was interested, to join them, because they were going to entertain the troops and all that sort of thing. But I wound up in the infantry instead, and never did get to go with him. But who knows? Only the good Lord. I might have been in that plane with him.
But providence was rare, and even those who did survive must live on with the nightmares and reminders begotten by the war.
I hate war, I'll tell you that. I think it's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. That innocent lives have to be so wasted.
The heroes didn't come back. The heroes are on the beaches in Europe or in the Pacific.
This ESPN program is presented by Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you.
Let's keep sports going. Give the boys in the bleachers overseas a break. We like to root and cheer for our favorites just like we did before the war.
Well, I see no reason why sports should be discontinued for the duration, because although we can't see the games out in the middle of the ocean, we get a kick out of hearing them.
During the war, America's resources were subject to strict rationing, but the decision was made to allow the country's top sports resource to continue.
While we have lost many of our star players, the armed forces overseas demand that we play baseball. The fans here in this country want to see our national game continue.
I think Roosevelt and Congress decided to let baseball continue because it was such a nice, relaxing sport for and recreation for all the workers who were working during those days. So baseball did continue.
There possibly was on several occasions people wondering why we were playing while this was going on. And yet baseball lost some of its greatest stars, and I think that was one of the reasons why the fans still came out to watch baseball. And they had to have some recreation going along with this terrible war.
But reminders of the war were always present, and though baseball continued, it did ration some of its long-standing traditions, eliminating the warm weather rite of passage known as spring training.
we were not able to travel. You had travel restrictions placed on you. So the Browns trained in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which is about 100 miles south of St. Louis, at Southeast Missouri State College University. The ball club had dirt put in the base, the floor of this field house, had a batting cage put up, and the first, I assume, of the pitching machines installed. So if the weather got bad outside, our hitters were able to come into the field house and hit off the pitching machine. And I think when the 44 season started, the Browns were probably at least a week ahead of the other ball clubs because they won the first 9 games in 44.
The war came along, and Mr. Rickey had the ball club at Bear Mountain up the Hudson River in New York. And it was probably the best spring training camp during the war that any ball club had because the Dodgers could use the field house at West Point.
In addition, the materials used to make the tools of the game grew scarce, and baseball equipment took a temporary step backwards.
They were making so many restrictions, like rationing of gasoline and tires and so forth, wool, and that was very prominent in the baseball. And from 350 or so, whatever I might have hit, it went down to 305, and I believe it was Ted Williams who hit 406, and his average was something like 355 that following year. It was for the simple reason that they didn't have that good wool in the ball.
I remember hitting some balls, especially in 44, that I thought, man, you know, as good a ball as you hit, you thought it was out of the ballpark, and the outfielder would go out to the fence, and pretty soon he'd take 3 or 4 steps in and catch the fly ball.
And when you hit that first pitch of the ball that looked round, it looked like an egg. It really looked like an egg because there was no more drive in it after that.
It was still the best baseball in the land, and with subpar bats and gloves and decimated rosters, those who knew the game knew it just wasn't the same.
I think there was a difference because some of your top-grade ball players were drafted in, or enlisted or drafted into the service. It naturally had an impact on the overall play. It's like anything else. I mean, you take your good talent out, a lot of your good talent is naturally going to weaken it a little.
It was depleted. I would say we were a AAA ball club at that particular time.
Maybe it's why a wretched team like the St. Louis Browns won its only pennant in 44, and why one-armed Pete Gray got the chance to play.
It's pretty tough playing up there for a fellow with one arm anyhow. You know, them pitchers are a little better than the minor leagues.
It's why 15-year-old schoolboy Joe Nuxall signed a big league contract in 1944, seeking to fill the void left by baseball stars in their prime who chose to serve their country.
If it hadn't have been for those years, I think I had a shot at getting 3,000 hits.
I've often wondered, Ted Williams, what kind of records, Bob Feller, what kind of records would they have had they not been interrupted?
Bob Feller, if he hadn't missed 3 years of his great years when he was pitching, why, he would have probably really set more pitching records than any pitcher that ever lived. And that goes for Ted Williams, too. You know, in his prime, he missed 3 years.
I might have got 100 more wins, which I was averaging over 25 a year. And I was also probably come up with another 1,200 or 1,300 strikeout. I'm very proud of my war records, like on my baseball record. I would never be able to face anybody and talk about my baseball record if I hadn't spent time in the service.
The 3 years I lost is the only thing that you can say. Hell, there was 9 billion guys that did, contributed a lot more than I did.
I got battlefield commission, and I debated about taking it, and I thought that, okay, I'm going to take it because I'd rather go over to Japan to fight the Japanese as an officer. I'd have a better chance of coming back alive as an officer. And I never dreamed that we were going to drop that bomb. Yet my wife was working for DuPont, and she knew that we had that bomb, but she couldn't tell me because that's security.
The bomb would end the war in tragic fashion, but save the lives of many on the brink of invasion.
They sent us back to form squadrons and shake down a carrier on the way to Japan. They were going to hit Japan in October.
I was in the 3rd Marine Division when the war ended, and they were preparing to go into Tokyo, and the general there said, Pee Wee, I know you're not a Marine man. They had sent me over to kind of set up athletic programs because they had come back from Iwo Jima. And he said, we may take you into Tokyo with us we go in. I said, you don't have to, really.
The talk was that we were going to go be in on the invasion of Japan. So I was quite happy when I had seen that the atomic bomb had been dropped because it did stop the war.
The unexpected end of World War II naturally sparked celebration among civilians and servicemen alike.
When it was declared, I had a bottle of Irish whiskey saved up for it, and it says, what a celebration we're going to have here.
Really, you had an idea it was going to end, but you didn't think it was going to happen that quick.
Probably one of the happiest days of my life was when I got to go home.
And upon returning to the States, these baseball vets turned battle vets looked upon their game in a whole new light.
When I came back, I felt like, wow, what a great way to make a living. That if I goof up, that there's going to be a relief pitcher coming there. Nobody's going to shoot me. And I think it really gave me the fortitude that maybe I lacked and maybe I would have struggled with the first couple of years in the big league.
And I think learning to fly an airplane helped me as much as anything. See, I was 25 years old, and you'd think your career would be over at that time. But I think learning to fly helped me through concentration, and it re-stimulated my ability to learn, I believe.
Being in the war like that, it probably helped my managing. It made me understand the problems that young men have and the pressures that they go through, not only that they went through in the war, but what they do in baseball today. And
I don't begrudge going into service. I went in and served my country, and I was very fortunate to get out and resume my career in baseball, which I came out in March of 1946. I had one of my greater years. I led both legs with 130 runs batted in, and I had 17 triples, and I had 23 assists from the outfield. So it didn't, the 3 years that I missed really didn't hurt me that much.
But not everyone could madly dash back to where they were, for baseball skills had been eroded.
When I came back, you don't know what the heck shape you're in. DiMaggio didn't have a good year. He didn't have a bad year. He didn't have a usual DiMaggio year.
But I just fell flat in my face. I don't know what happened. I just lost everything.
DiMaggio really was never the same player. He only had one big year after the war, 1948.
The boys come back, then they had to get back in the groove, you might call it. They had to readjust themselves. And some of them couldn't because they had defects, something happened to them.
In retrospect, most baseball players did escape the deadly wrath of war, but there will always be the question of what might have been.
There were 274 major league players in military service in World War II. Out of 400, only one was killed, and that was Elmer Gideon, the first baseman for Washington. He was killed in France in April 1944.
And it cost, I think, a Hall of Fame, probably election, so far at least, to Cecil Travis, the Washington shortstop, who was second in hitting the year Ted hit 400, was a real good hitting shortstop, third baseman, who came back from the Battle of the Bulge with frozen feet.
In the record books, it very seldom says anything about Hank Greenberg, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, and hundreds of other major league players, that they were ever in military service. And I don't think there's any, they say the heroes are the ones that didn't come back. But I think baseball did their share. But I think that they should continue to do their share by it being noted in World War I, II, Vietnam, and Korea in all their record books that the ones that served their country at that time. I don't think that's asking too much.
This is Warner Fusel.
Major League Baseball magazine is presented by new Wild and Mild ranch-flavored Frito brand corn chips. Rustle up some.